This Cold War overview is essential for competitive exams, helping aspirants grasp the geopolitical ripple effects of this conflict.
Welcome to our in-depth Cold War guide, created for UPSC aspirants. In just under 10 minutes, we'll cover the era's core aspects: the ideological clash between superpowers, major events, the non-aligned movement, and the far-reaching impact of this era. Let's begin.
Stick with us as we delve into the events, reasons, and legacy of this prolonged period of tension.
The Cold War, lasting from 1947 to 1991, was a period of intense geopolitical tension rooted in deep ideological conflicts between the United States and the Soviet Union. With the defeat of Nazi Germany in 1945, the US and Soviet Union emerged as the world's superpowers, yet their wartime alliance quickly fractured as they began to compete for global influence and dominance.
In 1946, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill famously warned of an Iron Curtain descending across Europe, symbolizing the stark ideological split between Eastern socialism and Western capitalism that would define the era.
The Marshall Plan, launched in 1948, provided $13 billion to rebuild Western Europe, aiming to counter Soviet influence and promote capitalism by stabilizing war-torn economies. This massive economic aid was crucial in revitalizing Western European nations and preventing the spread of communism.
The Truman Doctrine, announced in 1947, marked a significant turning point, with the US pledging to support nations threatened by communism, effectively committing to a policy of containment. This policy became the cornerstone of America's strategy to contain Soviet expansion and influence around the world.
The Soviet Union, under the leadership of Joseph Stalin, meanwhile established tight control over Eastern Europe, aiming to create a protective buffer zone against potential Western aggression. This control was solidified through the establishment of pro-Soviet governments and military presence in the region.
From Turkey to Greece, the geopolitical landscape was a battleground, where US and Soviet policies directly clashed, each power seeking to expand their spheres of influence and secure strategic allies. This intense rivalry defined international relations for nearly half a century, shaping the modern world in profound ways.
The Cold War was defined by critical events that intensified global divisions and anxieties, shaping the geopolitical landscape for decades. In 1948, the Berlin Blockade was the first major Cold War crisis, as the Soviet Union cut off access to West Berlin, challenging Western resolve and testing the limits of post-war cooperation.
The US responded with the Berlin airlift, delivering food, fuel, and supplies by air to sustain the isolated city, demonstrating a commitment to freedom and resilience, symbolizing a peaceful victory against Soviet pressure and a significant moment in Cold War history.
The Korean War from 1950 to 1953 escalated Cold War tensions, with the US backing South Korea against the Soviet-supported North, leading to a brutal and costly conflict. This war ended with Korea divided at the 38th parallel, a division that persists to this day, symbolizing the enduring legacy of Cold War rivalries.
In 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. After discovering Soviet missiles in Cuba, the US established a naval blockade, leading to a tense 13-day standoff that had the world holding its breath. Eventually, the USSR agreed to dismantle its missiles in Cuba, avoiding catastrophe and marking a pivotal moment in Cold War diplomacy.
Vietnam became another Cold War hotspot, as the US intervened to prevent the spread of communism, leading to a prolonged and controversial conflict. After years of intense fighting, the US withdrew in 1975, with Vietnam uniting under a communist government, a significant blow to US Cold War strategy.
The Middle East also became a Cold War theater. The Arab-Israeli conflicts saw US support for Israel and Soviet backing for Arab states, adding another layer of rivalry to an already volatile region, further complicating international relations during the Cold War era.
At its root, the Cold War was a battle of ideologies, a clash between two fundamentally different ways of life and governance. The capitalist United States viewed communism as a direct threat to freedom, democracy, and economic stability, fearing that the spread of communism would undermine the principles of free enterprise and individual rights. Meanwhile, the socialist Soviet Union saw capitalism as inherently exploitative and imperialistic, believing that it oppressed the working class and perpetuated inequality.
Soviet occupation of Eastern Europe after World War II and Stalin's oppressive policies stoked Western fears, leading to a deep-seated mistrust and a sense of urgency to counter Soviet influence. The US responded with containment strategies like the Truman Doctrine, which aimed to support free peoples resisting subjugation, and the Marshall Plan, which provided economic aid to rebuild war-torn Europe, seeking to curb Soviet influence and prevent the spread of communism by stabilizing economies. These efforts were part of a broader strategy to contain communism and prevent its spread across the globe.
Both superpowers amassed vast stockpiles of nuclear weapons, leading to an intense arms race that saw each side striving to outdo the other in terms of military capability. This culminated in the doctrine of mutually assured destruction, or MAD, which posited that any nuclear conflict would result in total annihilation for both sides. The fear of such a catastrophic outcome kept both superpowers in a tense standoff, with each side wary of provoking the other.
The 1957 launch of Sputnik by the USSR marked a significant milestone, intensifying the Cold War and spurring the US to create NASA, thereby embarking on the space race. This race to dominate space symbolized the broader technological and ideological competition between the two superpowers.
The 1949 founding of NATO, a military alliance of Western nations, and the 1955 formation of the Warsaw Pact by the Soviet Union and its allies, institutionalized the divide, aligning nations firmly under either US or Soviet influence and solidifying the geopolitical landscape of the Cold War.
Fear and propaganda permeated both societies, from anti-communist movements in the US, such as McCarthyism, which led to widespread paranoia and accusations, to KGB surveillance in the Soviet Union, where citizens were closely monitored, deepening mistrust and suspicion on both sides, and ensuring that the Cold War remained a pervasive and defining feature of global politics for decades.
The Cold War spurred rapid advancements in various fields, but its disadvantages cast a shadow over this era.
The space race brought new technologies to civilian life. Innovations in communications, computing, and materials science emerged from military and space research.
However, proxy wars across Asia, Africa, and Latin America left long-lasting scars. Nations were drawn into conflict, stunting growth and fostering decades of instability.
Both superpowers invested heavily in education and infrastructure, boosting science, technology, and defense.
But the arms race drained enormous resources, diverting funds from essential services like healthcare and education. The non-aligned movement, or NAM, emerged in the 1950s, championed by leaders like India's Jawaharlal Nehru, Indonesia's Sukarno, and Yugoslavia's Tito. NAM sought to offer an alternative path, avoiding entanglement in Cold War conflicts.
The Bandung Conference in 1955 marked a pivotal moment, bringing together Asian and African leaders to lay the groundwork for NAM, promoting peace and neutrality.
India leveraged its non-aligned status to maintain relationships with both superpowers, securing aid and technological support without committing to military alliances.
NAM countries advocated for decolonization, disarmament, and peaceful coexistence, emphasizing sovereignty and economic cooperation.
In the late 1980s, internal pressures and economic stagnation weakened the Soviet Union. Mikhail Gorbachev's policies of glasnost, or openness, and perestroika, or restructuring, aimed to revitalize Soviet society but instead accelerated its dissolution.
In 1991, the USSR officially disbanded, leading to a unipolar world dominated by the United States.
Post-Cold War, NATO expanded into former Eastern Bloc nations, reshaping alliances and heightening US influence worldwide. The Cold War's influence continues to shape the modern world, impacting alliances, technology, and global security. If you found this summary helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insights on key historical topics. Narrator: calm, informative. Now let's delve deeper into some of the most pivotal events of the Cold War that shaped the 20th century. Narrator: reflective, analytical. The Cold War didn't just affect the nations directly involved, it cast a long shadow over global politics, influencing international relations, economic policies, and military strategies worldwide. Speaker_2, informative. The division of the world into Eastern and Western blocs led to the formation of key alliances such as NATO and the Warsaw Pact, fundamentally altering the geopolitical landscape. Narrator: thought-provoking. The ideological battle between capitalism and communism also played out in numerous proxy wars across Asia, Africa, and Latin America, where superpowers sought to expand their influence. Speaker_2, Analytical. This period saw an unprecedented arms race, with both the USA and USSR amassing vast arsenals of nuclear weapons, leading to a state of mutually assured destruction. Narrator, reflective. The Cold War's end marked the beginning of a new era in global politics. Speaker_2, informative. However, the legacy of the Cold War continues to influence current international relations, from the ongoing tensions between NATO and Russia to the rise of new global powers like China. Narrator, thought-provoking. As we reflect on the Cold War's impact, it's crucial to understand how its lessons continue to shape our world today, reminding us of the delicate balance required to maintain global peace and stability. Video footage of the United Nations Assembly. Narrator, intriguing, suspenseful. The Cold War wasn't just a battle of ideologies or military might, it was also a war of shadows, fought in the realm of espionage and intelligence. Speaker_3, informative. Both the United States and the Soviet Union invested heavily in intelligence agencies like the CIA and the KGB, employing spies and covert operations to gain the upper hand. Narrator, dramatic. These spies operated in secrecy, gathering critical information, executing sabotage missions, and sometimes even engaging in assassination plots. Speaker_3, analytical. The Berlin Wall became a focal point for espionage activities, with both sides deploying agents to infiltrate and gather intelligence. Narrator, reflected. The era also saw the development of sophisticated spy gadgets and encryption techniques, many of which laid the groundwork for modern-day intelligence technologies. Speaker_3, informative. Notable spies like Aldrich Ames and Oleg Gordievsky became infamous for their roles in this clandestine war, their actions having far-reaching consequences. Narrator, thought-provoking. The intrigue and danger of Cold War espionage have since inspired countless films and novels, capturing the public's imagination and highlighting the high stakes of this hidden conflict. Speaker_3, reflective. Although the Cold War has ended, its legacy in espionage and intelligence continues to influence modern-day security operations and cyber warfare. Narrator, contemplative. As we navigate the complexities of today's global politics, the lessons learned from Cold War espionage remind us of the ever-present need for vigilance and the delicate balance of power. Speaker_3, thoughtful. Understanding this shadowy aspect of the Cold War helps us appreciate the intricate dance of diplomacy and intelligence that continues to shape our world. Video fade to black. Thoughtful. The Cold War wasn't just a geopolitical conflict, it also profoundly influenced popular culture, leaving a lasting impact on film, literature, and even music. Reflective. As we look back at the Cold War, it's crucial to understand its lasting legacy and the lessons it imparts. This era shaped the modern world in countless ways, from technological advancements to political ideologies. Informative. The Cold War was not just a battle of ideologies and political maneuvering, it was also a race for technological supremacy. From the space race to nuclear arms, technology played a pivotal role in determining the course of the conflict. Reflective. The Cold War may have ended decades ago, but its influence on modern geopolitics is undeniable.